We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was recorded, the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present.
It's 9:26 p.m. on ANZAC Day 2006 when an earthquake hits the small town of Beaconsfield in North Tasmania. It only reaches a magnitude of 2.3 on the Richter scale, the kind of earthquake that you probably won't even feel. But for Todd Russell, it changes his life forever. As the earthquake hits, he's working almost a kilometre underground. 14 miners managed to scramble to safety from the rockfall, but Todd and fellow miner Brant Webb are trapped hundreds of metres under the surface in a cage the size of a dining table. After cutting their clothes and boots to free themselves from the rubble, they assess the situation. All they have is the small amount of water seeping through the rock overhead, and one muesli bar between them. They agree to wait 24 hours to eat it. They end up waiting 4 days. But it would be another 10 days before they're rescued. I'm at Middleton, and this is Headgame. Today, an extraordinary insight into what it's like to be trapped nearly a kilometre underground with nothing but a mate, a muesli bar, and the hope to be reunited with loved ones. Todd, it's great to have you on my podcast, Headgame. So take me back to the earthquake. Now, the earthquake hits a 2.3 on the Richter scale. Nothing. We don't even feel it on the surface. Yep. However, underground is a lot different. Talk me through that moment when that happened and when you realised you were in serious trouble.
So the night before, I was working in the 925 level. It's the same level as what we got stuck in on the ANZAC Day. And the ground was very noisy, popping and cracking, and I actually got hit with a rock the night before, which was probably the size of a football, and it actually knocked the helmet off my head. So the next night when we come in, like I said, I was backfilling.
And that's just due to the stress and the pressure, and it just ground. Poof.
Yep, and it's spitting rocks and dropping rocks. So the next night on ANZAC Day, like I said, I was doing some backfilling, and Brant and Larry had arrived at around about 7:25, 7:30 p.m. at night. And I remember parking my underground loader back at the crosscut. I got out, grabbed my water bottle, and I proceeded up to where the light vehicle was parked, which was halfway between where Larry and the bogger was. I placed that on the back of the vehicle, and as I proceeded up to the telly loader, Brant reached into his pocket and he pulled out a coin. And he tossed the coin and he said to Larry, "What do you want, heads or tails?" That was the difference between Brant being in the basket with me and Larry Knight being where he was. So the toss of a coin. The toss of a coin cost Larry his life, but saved Brant's just by the toss of that coin. It was 9:25 p.m. is obviously the seismic event, which registered 2.3 on the Richter scale. And even though you say you don't feel them vibrations, I have been informed at stage that some of the vibrations were felt 15 k's away. For us, it was instant. Bang, quicker than you can blink, quicker than a split second. And, I remember laying there, and I'm in a position that nobody's body should be put in. My left leg was completely numb from my hip to the tips of my toes was numb. That took 6 days to recover. My left knee was punched through 100mm galvanised steel mesh. My entire body, apart from my forearms, from my elbows down and my neck up, was covered in rock. And when I say rock, some of them were as small as 50-cent pieces, some were as big as footballs. And it wasn't until then that I sort of started to get my bearings about myself that I realised what had happened. Initially, I thought there'd been a malfunction on the machine where the tyres might have blown out or something like that because of the percussion.
Where were you?
Inside the basket. It's a basket that's 1.4 metres square, so it's only 900 high, and there's no roof above us. It's open, so we're open to the elements. But, and we've now got this suspended above us like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. We only needed one piece of that rock to move, and there's a fair chance that we're going to be crushed to death. But I remember laying there in the darkness, completely buried in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember screaming to Larry and to Brant to get us out, get us out, and trying to get Brant to help me get the rock off me. And I was weighing at 100, I think I was 116 kilo when I was working underground, and thought maybe I was physically strong enough to heave up and push the rock off me. But each time that I did that, it compacted tighter and tighter, and I was unable to take as much oxygen in. The pressure was actually starting to push the contents of my stomach up. I was slowly suffocating, and I remember laying there in excruciating pain, and I just prayed to the big fella. I said, "You've got to take me." I said, "I can't handle this anymore." So, and I remember laying there wanting it to end, and an image appeared, and that image was a picture of Carolyn, myself, and the 3 kids. Because only a week or 2 weeks before Beaconsfield happening, we went and had family portraits taken. And one of the photos was our group photo. And once that image appeared, I knew I had to fight. I couldn't leave my family behind. And to see that image was the image that brought me back to fight, and then scream to Brant, even though I'm now buried at around about the 4-hour mark, worried about a crush injury.
Yeah, you got the toxins, you got the gravity that's against you, you got the rocks that are on you, you got a situation where it's pitch black, and you know how dangerous it is down there. You're thinking, I'm never getting out of this situation.
That's right.
And then you've got your pal next to you that's unconscious.
Yep.
This picture comes up, bang, that's your reason.
Yep. That's what I now fight for. So, Brant's now come around. We've set about removing this rock that's covering my entire body, one rock at a time. Obviously, there was no room to put it outside the basket, so the bigger rocks had to be stacked inside the basket. The smaller rocks we found places for. So now we're in a basket that's 1.4 metres by now 700. So we've taken half the space of the cage stacked with rock. We had one guy laying on his back, one laying on his side. So each time we want to toss and turn, it was just like laying on a bed of razor blades. So after, the concerns of a crush injury, 4.5 hours later, I am now in a position where I'm pretty much totally incapacitated because my left leg's completely numb.
Mm-hmm. So when did your pal come to? When did he sort of come to? When did you realise? Well, it must have been a relief to find out that he was actually, because knowing that he's there and he's not responding, you're probably thinking he's dead.
Well, the thing is, I couldn't see. Because you're in darkness.
And you know he's there and he's not responding. Are you thinking in your head he's dead?
Yes. I'm thinking I'm not getting any response for him.
It's pitch black as well.
Because what people don't realise is when you work underground, there's a difference between dark and darkness. You're sitting in a room, you turn the lights off, bang, it's pitch black dark. But over a period of 30 or 40 seconds, your night light starts to come through your eyes and you can actually see through the darkness. When you're underground, you cannot see 2 centimetres in front of you.
So how do you know that he's alive? How do you know that Brant's alive?
So we're probably about, I don't know, probably 3.5 hours into it.
Mm-hmm.
So once I made contact with him, like he then yelled out to me. So he's obviously come around. He's now fearing for his life as well. So now he's yelling out to me, and next thing you know, bang, right, we're on a level playing field, and we're talking to each other through the darkness, not knowing where each other were. Like we knew we were within an area that we were, but I didn't know what position he was in. He didn't know what position I was in.
Was it a relief or did it incite panic?
If Brant hadn't have come through, and that image of mine didn't come through, it's just fortunate that we both pulled through, because there'd be nothing worse. And you can imagine living in a small area with a deceased body beside you. You're now dealing with that as well as whatever else is going on.
So that mindset flip, you see that picture, you now got Brant on side. How does the communication happen, and what do you start doing to make things better for you?
So without using the words that we probably used underground throughout the course of the day. But it was a matter of, look, our main priority now is if you're free, Brant, we need to free me. And because of the rock and stuff that we're using, a lot of it was quartz and that too, and quartz is very sharp. So, we've got a lot of cuts, bruises, lacerations throughout the course. But, over that period of the few hours to get the rock off me, and then obviously we go into the next 6 day station there where, there's a lot of things that we were doing, a lot of things that we're talking about, just to try and keep our morale up.
So you mentioned morale, and in the military, it's everything. We say, humour in the face of adversity. Morale is ultimately, I would say, one of the key survival methods of staying alive.
Yep.
Morale, whether that's hope, whether it's just humour in the face of adversity, just trying to keep morale high, because that's what's going to keep you alive, right?
Yep.
How did you keep morale to a level where there was hope?
Well, we're going two stages there, you have morale and you have that roller coaster ride as well. So throughout the course of the next 6 days, we had some highs and we had a lot of lows. But morale, we talked about family, and that's what got us through. Both Brant and I were two completely different people. We'd never worked together before in 7 years. We'd started at the mine on the same day under the same mining contractor, but never ever worked together until ANZAC Day 2006. It was interesting how, everybody's got a different life story. And Brant's older than me, him and Rachel. They've got twins who were 18 at the time. I had a younger family, so I had 3 children. I had 2 boys and a girl, so I had Liam, who was 6 at the time.
Yep.
Madison, who was 10 at the time, and my eldest was 12. So they were younger. As part of our conversations, it was about if anything happened to him or happened to me, we had specific messages we want to take them back to our family. So once we got our bearings, one, I think it was my cap lamp, had been smashed in the rockfall. Brant's, fortunately, was knocked off his head. So after scrounging through the rocks, we found his cap lamp. So we had light sparingly. So we used, and we knew that the battery would only last a period of, say, 12 or 14 hours, maybe.
So you had to ration your light. How did you food, water? How did you ration that?
So the first 6 days, like I said, I had my water bottle in the basket, but still to this day, I have no idea where that water bottle went to. So over the 6 days, we started collecting groundwater in one helmet. So the dripping of the water, because Beaconsfield was a very wet mine. So, but to get a mouthful of water, it took somewhere in the vicinity of probably 2 hours just to get a mouthful of water. So we then decided, look, we can't rely on this. So we started collecting our urine in another helmet. Worst case scenario, not that we didn't do that. Luckily, we didn't have to. But over the 6 days, I said we started collecting the water. We had no food apart from a muesli bar. Brant he gave me half of his muesli bar, but I lost it. So I didn't eat for the first 6 days. We never slept for 6 days because we were too frightened, Ant. And like I said, over the 6 days before being found alive, there was so much happening. Because I had a watch on and I knew that the accident happened about 9:25. So every time we got to 9:25, I knew whether it was day shift, I knew whether it was night shift. And over the course of the next 6 days, like I said, there was so much happening. There's underground loaders working in the 925 level, bogging the dirt out, taking it back and putting it in the stockpile, even to the extent where it started to lift the back of the machine that both Brant and I are on. We've got all this rock suspended above us like a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. And unbeknownst to both Brant and myself at this time, the body of Larry Knight had been found 2 days in. So they didn't give both Brant and myself any chance of survival. So what we were now concerned of is now they've found the back of the machine, they're going to bring in a big loader, put a big chain on it and just drag it out so they can give our bodies back to our loved ones so they could bury us. But it got to a stage where we could hear the underground drill rigs drilling away and it just sounded like they were rehabilitating the area. But all of a sudden there's dead silence and we couldn't understand why. We could hear the machines driving off in the distance. You hear the light vehicles start up and drive off, and we knew that the day shift had come on and the night shift had gone off, but after a period of time, like I said, there was dead silence. And we didn't know whether someone else had been hurt or something from a potential rockfall. And then, we're laying there in the pitch black darkness which if you haven't been underground, you don't know what darkness is. And all of a sudden, there's just this almighty explosion. So what we realised later, 30 metres from where we were laying, they started drilling and blasting.
Did you try and communicate with them?
So we tried to make communication. We had some pliers and a shifter and some rock. So we were bashing on the steel cage.
You were.
Trying to notify them that. And then all of a sudden the horn beeped. So we thought we'd been found alive. But it wasn't. It was just to notify people that were in the area that the machine was starting up and was driving off.
In a survival situation like that, which I think is really important for the listeners, is any little glimmer of hope like that horn blow, and you grabbed hold of that.
Yep.
Was that morale in itself?
Yep, that lifted us because, boom. And then you get the drilling and blasting and you're back down here at the floor level.
Yeah.
You're on the downer. And like I said, we're in pitch black darkness, so we've turned the light on because we're using it sparingly. And we just looked at each other and said, what the, what? And I took a pen from my pocket and I started, on my left leg, I started recording times and dates. So that whatever they did on the outside killed us, that if they recovered our bodies, there was proof to prove that what they did killed us and we were alive at that particular point in time. And then on my right leg, this was probably the hardest thing that I endured while I was underground. So I sat there and I wrote a goodbye letter or goodbye note to every individual of the family, Mum, Dad, Carolyn, Trent, Madison, Liam, brother, sister, a whole lot, just on my left leg, just saying, look, I can't even remember what I wrote, but there's a little note to each of them, so that when our bodies were recovered, and that's what we did, and that was the first 6 days. And it wasn't until the Sunday afternoon there was two gentlemen that came back down to the 925 level, and as I said, unfortunately, Larry lost his life, and his body was recovered 2 days into the rescue, and that area then became a crime scene. So it was cordoned off for investigation purposes, processes in place, and now it's a crime scene. It had to be guarded by mines inspectors and stuff like that, so that if our bodies were recovered, then they do the full investigation. And these two gentlemen, like I said, come back down to that area, and they made a remark to the mines inspector that maybe you need to have a coffee, and he sort of twigged on what was happening, and he said to the guys, look, it'll take me about 15 minutes to have a coffee. So no sooner did that mines inspector go out of sight, they entered the 925 level at their own risk, and that's what they did. They entered at their own risk because it was such heavily devastated. Yeah. As I said earlier, Brant and I were two completely different people, and apart from two things we had in common, we both married high school sweethearts, and we both knew how to sing Kenny Rogers' The Gambler. So
a lot of Kenny Rogers going on down there, was there?
Yeah, but music in general is another healer. And
another motivator, right?
Yeah, and jokes like Brant.
Morale.
Yep, Brant is a joker. And, throughout the course of the rescue, I had my strengths. He had his strengths. So we relied on each other's strengths to get us through. But that Sunday afternoon...
Saved each other, ultimately.
Yep, pretty much. And then, so that Sunday, when these two gentlemen entered the 925 level to do that so-called risk assessment, we were singing The Gambler. And then I remember laying there on our back singing The Gambler, and it didn't sound real good, but it was morale boosting. And then all of a sudden I just hear this noise, and I said to Brant, "Shut up." And he said, "Why?" I said, "No, shut up." And then I yelled out, "Is there anyone out there?" And this voice come back. Our hearts just sunk. After 6 days enduring all this hardness and what we did to finally have communication to the outside world, I've spoken to these two gentlemen and they told me how they both just collapsed to the ground when they heard our voices. And then after being found alive, that's when everything changed. Like the first 6 days felt like a 12-hour shift. It just went so fast, Ant. But after being found alive the next 8, it felt like 12 months. Because they had to put implementations in place now. They've got to dot their I's, cross their T's and do everything correctly, because now they've got 2 guys that are alive, buried under all this rock, and what they could have done could have killed us. They've now got to put implementation in place on how they're going to extract us from where we are and bring us home safely.
So you get this hope, we've been found, we'll be out of here in a couple of hours.
Yep.
And you're still under there for 8 days.
You know, you can imagine for both Brant and myself the emotions now that we've been found alive. You know, here we are thinking the next time they press this button, they're going to kill us. And it was drilled. It was ready to charge and blast. But they found us beforehand. So
because of 2 people as well, it went against protocol.
Yep. And went into the 925 level to do that so-called risk assessment for one last chance before they press that button again. It wasn't charged, but they were going to charge it and they were going to blast it. So then once these 2 gentlemen left the 925 level, they went out and informed the mines rescue personnel who were there on site, the miners, the mines inspector. They've gone then from underground to the office. And next thing you know, mate, it's just gone woof. Like wildfire. It's gone throughout the country, throughout the world, everywhere that these boys have been now found alive. So for the guys that are looking after the rescue, the pressure's now gone from here to here. So they had a control room up on the surface, and I think they had somewhere around, 25 individuals in that control room and trying to come up with scenarios on how they're going to extract us from where we were. But what they did to start off with is they brought an underground loader, like the one that I said they bipped the horn earlier. So the same loader they brought in and put a communication system in it where they could ask a series of questions. And they also had another transmitter set up so when we yelled back, it was being transmitted back to a guy writing all the answers to the questions down. And some of the questions were, how high off the ground was the basket? How far is the boom extended? So that's all now recorded. They then take that back to the surface, back to that control room. Then put in a plan of roughly, right, I think the boys, this is where they are. From what they're telling us, this is where we believe they are. So where they started drilling to us was pretty much in the right vicinity. When they broke through, they were so precise that drill's still spinning like that. We both turned and looked at the little cavity behind us, and here it is sitting there, spinning there like that, looking at us, spurting water at us. So that then became our link line to the outside world. So now we're starting to get water. Now we're starting to get food. They've sent a camera through that's now set up to a TV and video recorder, recording all our movements 24/7. We had a telephone sent through in a plastic bag in pieces with a diagram and a screwdriver. Over the next 8 days, there was so much happened, and you know, they had experts in from all different fields. You know, unbeknownst to both Brant and myself, 300 metres directly above us at the 630 level, they had guys using explosives and using all different types of explosives, so that if any stages in the final stages of the rescue, they had to use them. They had all the information. They had the vibrations monitored and recorded so that, you know, they knew what explosives to use. So that was all happening. Everything that we received came in a Mount Franklin water bottle, which was 600 mil, strapped to probably 4 lengths of electrical conduit. It was fed up and down like a pull-through on a rifle. Now I've got a telephone. One of the things I wanted to do, but they wouldn't allow it, I wanted to ring home because they had you know, the ways of doing it. But what they were worried about is because of the media contingency, and that is tapping lines, trying to get information to get a story and all that sort of thing. So what they started to do every day, you know, around about 3 or 4 o'clock, someone would come down up the chute in this Mount Franklin water bottle. You'd open it up and there'd be your mail. There'd be letters written from home. There was letters that we were writing back, and each time that we were writing to our family or anything that was coming in, it was all being monitored by a psychologist, because the last thing I want to do is send things through that were going to upsetting. But one of the things that I asked for from Carolyn, I mentioned to you earlier when I closed my eyes and that image appeared, one of the things that I asked from her was that photo. And it was only a small photo about, 2 inches square. But the psychologist wouldn't allow me to have it because they believed it was upsetting to me.
That's what kept you alive. That was the image
Yep.
that gave you that reason to still fight, to still be alive.
100%. Every couple of days we got fresh clothing.
Yeah.
So this day I remember it. I got a pair of fleecy lined track pants. A mate of mine, Dean Mackerel, who still is a very good friend of mine, he was one of the mines rescue guys that was in charge of talking to us, because if I wasn't talking, Brant had to be. So one of us had to be talking at all times. And the phone rang and I picked it up, and it's Macca, and he said, "Hey, big fella," he said, "just check your trousers pocket." So once I got into the track pants and was comfortable again, I put my hand in my pocket, and that photo was in the pocket of my track pants. And I took that photo and I sat it on a rock, 300 mil from my face. And when I got down, I looked at that photo and, I thought that's the reason I'm fighting. That's the reason why I need to go home. And, I lost a lot of tears over that particular photo, and throughout the course of the 14 days, I shed a lot of tears. And for people that know me, I don't cry a lot. I don't show emotions.
Ultimately, your emotions saved your life.
Yep.
And Brant's life.
Pretty much. And,
That's how powerful they are.
Even exactly right. And the way I see it, Ant, unless you're put in a position where you have to survive, you don't know what your mindset and your body is capable of doing.
Exactly. I always say that to people. When you're left with one option in life, you'll be absolutely surprised of what you're capable of what the human mind's capable of, what the body's capable of, and ultimately the soul, your emotions.
Yep.
The emotional connection that you have, and then you realise, actually, this is what got me through, is phenomenal, right? It kept you alive without a shadow of a doubt.
100%. 100%. I'm not going to doubt it.
But the rescue mission, and I think people oversee this such an important point that I'm going to raise here. The communication between yourself and the rescue party, because they're using explosives over your head. Any wrong passage of information, or you not being switched on, or you not being psychologically and physically aware of your surroundings, you got that wrong. They could have done an explosion. They could have drilled in the wrong place. They could have done. How psychologically draining was that? And did you share the load?
It had to be draining. And the thing is, it wasn't just a single decision. Because there was two of us, we discussed everything. What we couldn't understand is in the final stages of that rescue that we could hear the rock shattering in the tunnel. They were 1 metre below us and 2 metres past us in solid ground. We shouldn't be able to hear that. But they were so precise with their drilling and their surveying and their blasting. And I remember looking outside the basket, and I looked down through, and I could see this little hole. And down below I could see a cap lamp.
Wow. So that's the first time that you've seen movement.
Yep.
Outside of where you've been.
Yep.
And it's the first time. Wow.
So now, over the next 25 to 30 minutes, that hole has now become big enough for both Brant and I to be extracted from inside the basket. So here we are, 14 days on, a hole big enough. And, obviously Pat Ball, who was the underground mine manager at the time, he come back down and he crawled on his hands and knees 15 metres up the tunnel and stood up inside the hole looking into where both Brant and I were. And he turned around and said, "Okay, Brant, we've got the green light. You're going to come out first." But what I can tell you, Ant, is the next 7 or 8 minutes that I spent inside that basket alone after Brant had been taken, and he's gone to freedom, he's going home to his family, I'm now inside this entombment alone, and if it goes pear-shaped now, I don't get to go home to my family. But it was probably the longest 7 or 8 minutes out of the entire 321 hours.
321 hours?
Yep, 321 hours is what we spent underground. 14 days.
And those 7-8 minutes
Just
were
felt like an eternity.
And how did you move? Because you were in pain, weren't you? Did you just, you're like that at this stage, just muster up the strength to drag myself out? How did was it literally a hole And you had to drag yourself through it.
Pretty much, it was a hole big enough. I then swung around and dropped my legs outside the basket, and then dropped down a metre to a stretcher that was waiting. I then turned around and I looked back inside the basket, looking straight back into it. In one corner, there's a plastic bag with every letter that had been written to me. In there, I reached up and I took that photo of myself, Carolyn and the kids. I put it in my pocket. I then grabbed the letters and everything in that plastic bag, put them on my chest, laid in a stretcher, and I scroll dragged 15 metres to paramedics, mines rescue personnel, where we hugged and we cried and we talked and we cheered, and just the elation of now knowing that I'm going home.
Take me back to that feeling. Take me back. What was going through your head? What was running through? What's the first thing that, obviously, you got the photo in your pocket, you got the letters, and you're just like, take me home.
Yeah, the thing is, I just wanted to get back, you know. For me, you know, my family are very, very close-knit, and, you know, the thing is, I'll never understand what they went through, and they'll never understand what I went through.
Yeah.
I talked earlier about the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
You know, they kept saying to us, we're going to have you out in 48 hours. So for 8 days, 48 hours, we got this, 48 hours, we're going to have you out, we're going to have you out, But now we have now come out. We know that we are safe. We know there's nothing that can hurt us. We weren't aware of our injuries, but there was conversations between us and paramedics where they didn't want us walking. But the way Brant and I looked at it, ANZAC Day 2006, we walked into the mine. 14 days later, the 9th of May 2006, we were going to walk out of there with or without it.
Amazing.
So when that cage reached the surface at 5:59am on the 9th of May 2006, we walked out of there with our arms in the air. We walked out of there on pure adrenaline only. For that cage to come up, and as it broke from below the surface to finally come up, you know, you're getting glimpses as it's come up because of the mesh in the cage, and to look straight across, and there's my family sitting and standing there waiting for me to come out, and it was just pure elation, you know. And you know, you've I don't know whether you've seen the footage, but we come out from underground and go straight over and take our tag off the board.
That's it.
And people say, why? Why wouldn't you just run straight to your love? Well, every time we come out from underground, you removed your tag. You know, it was to let people know that we were home.
Our job is done. We're alive. We're here.
100%. So when we went underground, there were 17 men went underground. There were 17 names on the tag board on the inside. When the rockfall happened, 14 men exited the mine, all bar 3 tags. One was Todd Russell, one was Brant Webb, the other one was Larry Knight. They were the 3 missing miners. So when we came out from underground, it was to tell everybody, hey, we're out. We're home.
We started this job and we're now finished it.
So then I turned and I went straight, put the arms around Carolyn, and just that feeling. I'm honestly going to sit here and tell you I can't explain it.
Yeah, and that one tag that was left, Larry. You say 17 went down.
Only 16 went home.
Only 16 went home.
And that's one of the hardest things that, you know, it's a bitter pill to swallow, because it should never have happened.
How you survive that, I will never know. To talk about having the strongest head game when it comes to controlling your emotions through claustrophobia, through being in a situation like that, you know, psychologically being switched on, because any one wrong move would have killed you. It doesn't matter if you've established the communications. It's like everything has to be to the point. Everything has to be pinpointed accuracy in order to keep us alive. To back and forth morale. I talk about morale all the time, how important it is, and you mentioned it as well. The you know, humour in the face of adversity, singing along, and you know, just finding the humorous side to life when everything is against you it's a phenomenal trait to have, and you don't realise you have it until you're put in that situation.
100%.
The family. how's family life? How did they react to it? And I can imagine family life is now as precious as anything.
Yeah, look, my family are well. Unfortunately, through the illness of PTSD and depression and stuff like that, I became a person that I probably shouldn't have done. But unfortunately, it's an illness and it's something that we can't control. And it sort of tarnished my relationship with my children in the earlier years, and I'm still trying to build that relationship back with my children and be a father to them, where I wasn't, because of it. Through the PTSD, it also cost me my marriage. So Carol and I separated, but she's moved on now. She's very happy in where she is, and
Todd, are you happy?
Yeah, look, I am. I'm looking for happiness, which it's out there, but I've also got to look after myself in a way where I've got to get myself right too. And I went down a road probably 8 months ago, where I was in a real good space, and I didn't want to be here, and I went to do something silly. But fortunately, because of what I've been through, I understand how important life is. I'm probably now in the best space I've been in probably 17 years.
Good. Well, what you've got to realise as well is the story that you have, will inspire someone. If you inspire one person, if you give someone one little glimmer of hope from what you've been through, for the mindset that you had to adapt in order to get yourself out of that situation, then you're giving back, you're doing something. There's a purpose for you.
And that's exactly what I've said to people. And, I look back on Beaconsfield and I look at the circumstances, and 100%ly I shouldn't be here. But
you are.
I am. And, as I said to people, I don't understand why, but and as you just said then, if I can help one person and save someone's life, I've done a job that by helping somebody else. And if that's what it is, well, I'm pretty sure that I've helped a lot of people along the way.
Exactly. And also what the coping mechanisms that you use to get through.
That's right.
Everyone's going through struggle. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's going through these hard times. And you say about, you don't understand why you're still here. There's some things that you don't need to understand. We mentioned that before, that you can never understand, but the why behind it. Yep. You're here. Why are you still here? Well, listen, if you can save one life, then you're doing your job.
Yep. That's
the why. That's the purpose. That's understandably why you are still here.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm very passionate, and I tell a story with great passion. If I just have an opportunity to help someone, and that's what I'm here for, and that's what I want to do.
This podcast will certainly help many of that, I'm sure, mate. Between us, we've got this. It's been amazing talking to you. Todd, you're an amazing individual. Keep being you. Don't ask too many questions. Just know the why. Keep doing what you're doing. And listen, ultimately, you and Brant helped each other save your lives. Now the roles are reversed now. I'm sure that you're going to be saving lives, especially with the motivational talking that you're doing and the stories that you have. Thanks for coming on, mate.
No worries. Thanks, Ant. Much appreciated, mate.
Buddy.
Thank you.
If you'd like to read more about Todd Russell's harrowing experience, you can read Bad Ground, Inside the Beaconsfield Mine Rescue by Tony Wright, Todd Russell and Brant Webb. Thanks so much for joining me on Head Game. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our incredible stories, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. I'm at Middleton. Catch you again next time.